Do I not already have this in front of me? All right, well, I have an even more professional version of it now.
Suitable for note-taking to ask
look
me
at that.
questions at the end if you'd like. And I think the commissioners and staff know me well enough to know that I'm reasonably informal, so, or easy to approach. So if you have questions throughout this, it will not throw me off if you ask questions as we go.
I was gonna say it was in such big print, I didn't need to put my glasses on, then I turned the page. Okay,
Well,
the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, commissioners and staff. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you this afternoon to kind of cover some of our 2019 projects and accomplishments, as well as where we believe we're going in 2020. So just as a broad overview, one of the things that I think we as an agency are very proud of is that we focus on the all hazards environment, dealing with those large-scale disasters that affect multiple jurisdictions, require multiple disciplines, and a collaborative effort to resolve. To that end, you know, we do really the legwork up front and then the support stuff post-incident to kind of help everybody through the recovery process. It's kind of unique that we are a service agency to everybody within Franklin County, but our real client base is serving the entities and the agencies and the jurisdictions throughout Franklin County. One of our goals, realizing that every disaster is a local incident or event, and it affects neighborhoods and communities, and they all have existing service providers, primarily in the area of public safety or government, that work with them on a daily basis on a variety of items and disciplines. So we're really supporting, you know, each of those government entities, helping them provide service to their agencies and their residents, and to be as effective and efficient as possible. So to that end, it always starts with planning, and it's not so much the function of plans that sit on the shelf and tend to get dusty over time, but really planning is an actionable item that really involves bringing the different voices together to talk through how everybody interacts, how they make each other stronger, and how they provide the service. So throughout 2019, you know, we've dealt with several of our plans that we're required to do on an ongoing basis: our hazardous materials response plan, our emergency operations plan. One of the items that we've taken on and fairly unique and we're very proud of is our snow and ice emergency plan. We are the one county within Ohio that we know of that has a collaborative plan along with the sheriff, the county engineer, the municipal service providers, that really pull all of the people and stakeholders together when we have a winter weather event, and how we are going to respond to that or try to lessen the impact on a daily basis. So 2019 was our first usage of that. You know, we really felt good about the information and the proactive nature to sharing that information and how everybody is conducting their daily business. We just held our 2020 planning meeting or checkup to kind of touch base, take into account any changes we need to make, ask if our service level we provided in 2019 was appropriate so we could adjust. And everybody seems to be very pleased and forward-leaning and looking forward to at least tackling the 2020 winter storms effectively. Going into 2020, we also are midstream on a large-scale evacuation plan that really discusses some of the concepts for urban environments, metropolitan environments, as if they have to deal with moving large quantities of our population out of harm's way, whether that is because of a impending threat or incident, as well as a loss of basic service that makes them unable to reside in their usual locations. And really what's important to that are the concepts that we're discussing regarding phased evacuation, shelter in place, evacuation zones, evacuation routes, so that everybody is understanding the concepts and the basic common operating system. Throughout that, we're also, and I'll talk closer to the end on our terrorism response annex, which is part of a larger grant project. And so that should unfold and be in place in 2020. Another function of our agency involves training for our service providers. We serve as the host for a variety of trainings throughout the year. These are typically or almost exclusively provided at no cost to the entities, no cost to us. Those are typically funded through FEMA, through Ohio Emergency Management Agency, and routinely bring in multiple disciplines. So it's not uncommon to be hosting a class on incident command that will have law enforcement, fire, public health, governmental entities, emergency management, all in the room, taking a class together and typically working through projects. As an offshoot of that, then every time we do a plan and have training on it, we do an exercise. We're required under the revised code to hold a series of hazardous material response plans in 2019. We did that as a full-scale exercise in conjunction with Franklin Township and Columbus Fire Division. Really involved large volumes of water and how we would spread large volumes of water and foam if there was a tank farm fire. Specifically, we exercised out in the area of Philippi and Fisher Roads, but those tanks do exist throughout our area, and so we need to plan how to effectively handle those operations. We've also just recently started to work on a direct deliverable out of our agency and worked with the City of Columbus Mayor's staff to develop a crisis communications workshop that really built upon large-scale incidents and how they communicate and message with each other at the community affairs level as well as the public, and manage a consistent message so that there isn't confusion, and so the right voices are heard and the right trusted information is presented. We just did one of those last week that did also touch on and drew upon our experience with our complex coordinated terrorism attack scenarios. Very well received, very, very good dialogue. It's something we're very proud of and can anticipate continuing to provide as a service or a deliverable going forward. Alerting and warning is the area that is my 3-second elevator speech when I'm talking to somebody and they like to know what we're doing, and I routinely remind them that they would know us of us or our agency as outdoor sirens or tornado sirens, in which case they instantly in a snapshot know what we do, even though that's a very small portion of our daily, weekly, monthly, yearly business. It's something that touches everybody in one way, shape, or form every Wednesday at noon, whether they realize it or not. We're very proud of our system. We've got one of the largest systems of sirens within the United States, and it is, and it says 99% fully operational. It's really 99.99% fully operational, meaning it is very, very uncommon for a siren to be completely out of service. In fact, I don't know that one has been out of service in 2019 yet. I draw back from saying 100% fully operational because I know as soon as I say that, we will have some anomaly that will take a siren out of service. But we have one of the most reliable, or at least in my opinion, one of the most reliable systems within the United States. That doesn't happen just accidentally. It works in conjunction with our testing program, and we do routinely have about 3% of our sirens on a weekly basis need some level of service, whether that is replacing batteries, investigating a power outage to it, whether it's line power or the battery charger isn't functioning, a radio communications issue, or a driver, an amplifier failure. So there's multiple amplifiers in the siren, so those can fail, but it doesn't take the siren out of service. That works hand in hand with our mass notification system. The public-facing side of that is known as Alert Franklin County, and most of the public is aware of that, and that's how we push out messages of a public safety nature and an informative nature to the public. Staffs, both within the county structure as well as the municipal partners, know it as the Everbridge notification system that many of them have their staff on for staff notifications during an incident. We continue to expand that system. Most recently, we worked with MORPC, or MORPC worked with us to begin to publish air quality alerts through the Alert Franklin County system. And I think that's going to be an ongoing and growing partnership with MORPC as far as their involvement goes. We've just signed an MOU, and I believe we'll be bringing their staff on board as one of those agencies that's using it for staff notification. And that kind of builds on several other collaborative ventures we've got going on from a planning nature. We manage a certain quantity of volunteers within our agency. The traditional and the nationally branded CERT organization, community emergency response teams, which are really people from neighborhoods who receive basic training in first aid, hazard awareness, assessment type items. We draw on them for damage assessment during an incident. We routinely use them as flood fight volunteers if we would ever get to a flooding situation where we needed to do sandbag operations. Those are the volunteers, or the first level of volunteers we draw upon. With our joining our collaborative venture with Homeland Security, we're now also pulling in the VIPS program, Volunteers in Public Safety Support. And we're kind of working on a strategic plan going forward that works collaboratively as a tiered system. So volunteers who want to be part of disaster response will start at a CERT level. We'll go through those basic levels of training. We'll kind of get vetted and become part of that organization. Those that wish to be more active for scheduled events, the Arnold Expo, different large crowd events, then can do the VIPS training, which has slightly more of a Homeland Security and security focus. We'll then do that training, and then they're part of that cache of volunteers we can draw upon for those events. We spend a lot of time dealing or managing with our Homeland Security grants. The primary one is the State Homeland Security Program that are FEMA funds that go to each state in our country, and the state then assigns them out to each region for Homeland Security or terrorism-related projects. What you see here is our awards over the past 3 years, and then we work with our regional partners and act as the regional coordinator and agent for our jurisdictions and bring forward programs. Most recently in 2019, that funded our purchase of bomb squad personal protective equipment, replacing their out-of-date equipment. Our recent Citizen Aid public treatment kit project. We've done the barricade project for OSU. What you see in your picture there is a different style of barricade that we're also exploring, which rather than being a long fence line style barricade, are more bollard style, which are a little more pedestrian friendly for large crowd events. So we're going to kind of look at that going forward. The State Homeland Security program is broken down or earmarked for two different disciplines, and that's why you see this broken down as SHISHUP, or the first grouping, and then a law enforcement focus that must go to law enforcement agencies. With our joining with Homeland Security now, we bring both of those programs in-house, and we kind of want to make them work together to kind of complement each other. They've kind of been in silos before, so now each side of that is well aware of which projects are being brought forward, because this funding stream does continue to drop about 5% per year, so we need to be as effective and efficient with our dollars as we can. And then finally, we do receive an annual amount of money from FEMA and Ohio EMA in emergency performance grant money that really funds staffing at our agency, or provides a portion of the funds for staffing at the agency. As I mentioned, we, over the summer, merged with Homeland Security, brought that into the all hazards environment. And while I say brought that into our agency, I actually like to think of that as started to provide our agency resources to the Homeland Security venture, whether that is community affairs, alerting and warning, planning. So we're hopeful that collaborative effort and bringing that in-house really creates a more robust all hazards environment. One of the things that has been an ongoing body of work in the area of Homeland Security is our Complex Coordinated Terrorism Attack Program. That's a FEMA direct deliverable to the county. to plan for a very terrible terrorist attack, kind of the worst of the worst days scenario, allows us to really push the boundaries of our command and control resource management. And one of the goals is that then that makes everything else that occurs of a smaller nature much easier to manage. So we have completed the risk assessment, the capabilities assessment, the gap analysis. We're now working on the final plan annex, which kind of defines the agency roles and responsibilities. In April of 2020, we expect to do a very robust full-scale exercise, really pushing the boundaries of law enforcement, fire, and EMS response, and particularly in the area of unified command and control. And then that will be followed up with a tabletop exercise that will really speak to recovery and what do you do in the weeks and months after an incident would occur. So that really speaks to economic recovery and what services you provide and how quickly you get your jurisdictions and your agencies back up and operating. One of the other things we've brought in as part of Homeland Security and the regional communications is the Franklin County radio system. So within there are about roughly 4,400 users on our Franklin County radio system, primarily comprised of the Sheriff's Office, Central Ohio Transit Authority, township law enforcement agencies, and then county agencies. So that really defines our user bank. And we are continuing to go through that system, make sure it's being maintained and operated as effectively and efficiently as possible. One of the changes is that system went digital in 2016, and a fair amount of equipment support and operations support was bundled into that initial contract. That sequence of support is expiring, so coming forth in 2020 will be a standalone contract for support and management of that system with Motorola, who provides all the equipment and the operating services, both for the county system as well as the state MARC system and the city of Columbus. All individual systems, but all operating Motorola-based equipment and software. To that effect, one of the things we are looking at, and what you see here is a map of those 3 radio systems within Franklin County. The left is the infrastructure that supports the state MARC system. And those green triangles are what are called simulcast towers, meaning the radio signal or the message goes out from each of those towers at the same time. So there's almost a uniform signal from 360 directions being transmitted around, in comparison to the black triangles where it is somewhat towers that are picking up the radio signal and then just extending its reach a little bit further. To the middle one, you see the City of Columbus system. All of their towers are simulcast towers. And then you'll see the county infrastructure with our 2 simulcast towers and then 3 repeater towers. This speaks a little bit to signal strength, and in our changing environment of connectivity, that signal strength and the ability for those signals to penetrate structures is a huge issue we need to address going forward and make sure that we've got the right infrastructure supporting those agencies we support. So to that end, we will continue to evaluate the correct way to address that infrastructure in 2020. We've got a range of proposals, and we will evaluate each of them and kind of make sure that we're selecting both the short-term best solution as well as the medium and long-range best solution. And then finally, we've got a fair amount of public information. Everything we do gets pushed out to the public for their continual support and awareness, as well as just information. A more informed public is in a better position to be prepared and respond. I covered a lot of ground there. I think there's a lot to digest. I will gladly dig down or answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Grady, and Director, thank you too for your presentation. Whenever I speak with you, I'm reminded of my early time in public service as a council member during 9/11. When disaster strikes, it's obviously unexpected, and the range and depth of what happens, we just don't know until it's here. That being said, this is one of those areas that always kind of quietly sits until something happens. And then there are moments where you're deploying resources that we don't see. You know, it's like little small leaks here or there, and you take care of, and we safely, we're taking care of it in a safe manner and don't see. But I think the fundamental question I have for you is, so your budget, let me just get to that line item, is there's a fairly good sized percentage in its rate of increase at 35.5%. And so one, I want you to talk about that specifically, the increase in budget and specifically what it's used for. I suspect it's grant dollars or things like that. You kind of covered it. But two, the fundamental question I have for you is, do you have everything you need for, I hate to say it, but for lack of a better way to say it, if disaster strikes? You know, are we doing everything that we can? Are we in position to respond appropriately? You sort of touched on that with the radio system and maybe some areas of opportunity for us to get better at, and so you might go into that a little bit. I hope you got all that.
I believe so, and so I'm going to start with that as I kind of tee up, and I was remiss, I didn't introduce Deputy Director Darrel Koerber sitting next to me, as well as Gina Williams, our fiscal manager, and Kelly McGuire, our Community Affairs Public Information Officer. And I'll let Gina explain maybe the percentage increase, and I think some of that has to do with either joining the agencies together, so we've now absorbed the Homeland Security, the radio system, budgets within there. I think that's probably a vast majority of it, along with how we show grant dollars as they get awarded versus expenditure. So I'll let her answer that in just a minute. And I think, thank you for your comments on the preparedness and the quiet nature, because one of our jobs is to quietly work with the concept of we're the ones in the back of the room asking what if, and tee up those questions. It really goes through our planning process of what if this happens, and do we have the right relationships, the right resources in place? You know, the short answer to your question is yes, I believe we do. And some of that builds upon our experience that we work in a great environment in our county and region, in that the collaborative nature of our work is actually pretty easy, or is not an exceptionally heavy lift for me, in that we've got great partners in the city of Columbus, all of the suburbs, the township, our county organizations, the sheriff's office, the engineer, and quite honestly, our state partners who are primarily not just housed here, but their families live here and they do business on a daily basis. And so, you know, it really builds upon that collaborative nature, because what we want to do, and I'm not a big fan of resources sitting collecting dust for the what if scenario. It's more about, and it speaks to the radio systems, supporting those items that are used on a daily basis, and then how do we bring them to bear as effectively and efficiently during an incident would occur. And so while that is, so I think that's in place. That work never stops. Just like every agency never stops evolving, staff is constantly turning over, you know, legislative oversight from the federal and the state level is ever changing. We are always meeting with those partners to kind of keep those relationships developed and built, and people coming to the table. There's in the public safety world this discussion about, you know, you never want to be exchanging business cards at 2 a.m. In front of a disaster. It really goes to that reach out and that work that goes forward. You know, one of the best scenarios for that is we are, with joining the agencies, rather than 2 different people managing those Homeland Security grants, the one staff person we've got in-house that has traditionally done that for us is going to absorb both of those, because the mechanics of doing that are very similar. The reporting processes, the software is all the same. And then we've got an opportunity. We're hiring a Homeland Security coordinator who's while they'll do some documentation grant justification writing as far as the narratives. One of their real missions is to be out working with each of our law enforcement and our public-private security partners to make sure that they're getting the information they need, they've got the resources they need. So we will continue to kind of build those relationships. We've also got a great opportunity, and we participate in it and watched it, last weekend, in that we have what amounts to a full-scale exercise roughly 7 to 8 times a year in Central Ohio that we call OSU Game Day. That is
the perfect example of collaboration is every Buckeye home football game.
It absolutely is and does continue to be one of them, and I will always extend the offer if any of you ever want to attend the 6 a.m. security briefings with us. We will gladly take you there. But it's pretty impressive, to be honest with you, because it is.
Does it include a tailgate party?
I'll let you arrange your own, Commissioner. I will gladly escort you there, though. But it really brings together not just Ohio State University, but Ohio Homeland Security, Ohio State Patrol, Ohio Communications, the DAS side of that. The FBI is in the room. The Sheriff's Office is in the room. Columbus Police are there. Columbus Fire is there. All the bomb squads are present. And it really creates this robust awareness of those resources, how they work together. You kind of saw it a little bit when OSU had their terrorism incident, 3 or 4 years ago. There was a huge volume in there. We actually had lots of lessons learned there that we translated into a regional SWAT exercise, because one of the challenges occasionally is when you've got so many resources is utilizing them without tripping over each other or creating problems where none exist. And that's a challenge for type A individuals who are used to solving problems, and you've got to respect that.
But Director, you answered the question, but I just want to make sure I do capture the budget increase question, and I want to keep us on schedule.
We operate from 4 different funds. And our operations fund, actually, we have proposed a 3% increase in the proportionate share this year, which will bring an additional $35,000 into our operations account. And we have reduced our expenses by $14,000 this year. The 2149 account, which is the Homeland Security operations account, and the regional communications account, there has been a significant increase in that. For next year, we are going to sign a multi-year contract with Motorola. They will be doing the maintenance and the repair on the towers, and some other work for us. It is the Motorola system that we use. They're a sole source company, and so we're signed a contract with them, and that increase will be around $500,000 a year for the contract. Another fund we have is our warning fund, and in the warning fund we have been our sirens are getting older, so in order to maintain them, we have a 5 project. Every year we're going to replace 5 fronts on they're called a front unit on these sirens, and then we're also going through a huge battery. Each siren has 2 batteries, and we're also going through a huge battery change to make sure that the batteries in the sirens, Wayland, who manufactures the sirens, states that the battery should only operate for 2 years, and then they have to be replaced. So we're doing some catch up on getting some batteries replaced, and our numbers are going to go up in our warning fund. And then our 4th fund, the 2150 fund, which is just Homeland Security pass-through, and it's just where the grants come in from Homeland Security, and then we turn around and pay the grants back out. I feel confident that this year, we were a little worried about the Homeland Security budget because we didn't have a lot of history to go on. But we're confident that we have a good number in there, and next year then we'll be able to really fine tune it, since we'll have a year's worth of history of us operating the system.
That's very helpful, and I just want to say I know Commissioner O'Grady and Commissioner Brown agrees with me on this. I mean, the sirens and the warning system and that entire system is not something that we want to skimp on or
No.
be behind too far on. And so thanks for sharing that as an important understanding of that increase and where some of those resources are going to go. So.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And if I could expand on that, just in one respect, because Gina touched on it and I did not, is that much of our operations in the emergency management world are paid for by proportionate share. All of those jurisdictions pay into that, including the county for the unincorporated areas of Franklin County. And we are having a 3% proportionate share increase. That is after 2 years of zero increase. Some of that's because we had a fund balance that we always maintain so that we can absorb a certain amount of economic changes for the jurisdictions. So we were drawing that down a little bit, and we think it's proactive and kind of vetted that out with the executive committee for our agency to kind of talk through, we wanted to maintain a certain level, and we have a policy on fund balance, but we don't want to basically keep excess funds. I understand coming from the municipal public safety world that, dollars that we save or utilize are dollars that aren't available for other programs. So we understand the big picture. So we are very conscious of that. Also wanting to make sure, though, that our systems are reliable and trusted, and that's an important aspect to it. So we're always kind of balancing that out. 2 years ago, we did reduce actually the per siren fee that we charge from $1,200 down to $1,000 per siren, under the same aspect of saving the municipalities and the jurisdictions a little bit of money and drawing down a little bit of our fund balance while maintaining that reliability and safety factor.
Commissioner Boyce, so couple things before we wrap up here. So back to the conversation about the OSU football. So a couple weeks back, as we I had a thought that as we head towards 2020, as we watched the Alabama LSU football game and President Trump attended the game, and I was thinking about all of the security that goes into any sporting event of that magnitude. Buckeye, and we've learned over the years what it takes for all the security at a Buckeye football game. I'm sure it's the same in Tuscaloosa for a game of that magnitude. And then you add into that a presidential visit and all the magnetometers and all the security that everybody that went to that game had to go through, and so you add that into that level, and then here we head towards 2020 and every 4 years, all the extra expense that we have to incur as a county as the presidential race comes to Ohio, because we happen to be the major county in one of the major states in the country, focusing on the presidential election. And it just, when I watched that game that night, I thought to myself, oh, here we go again. Here we head into, the 2020 budget cycle, a couple weeks before we start doing our budget hearings and we start preparing our 2020 budget, and all of the requests that we're going to get for the extra dollars from the sheriff's office for, presidential visits, not just from President Trump, but from, the candidates, the Democratic candidates as they come in, and the extra expenses for the Board of Elections. I just saw Director Leonard walk in the room, and the extra expenses of a presidential election year. And, here we go again. So here we are, 2020 presidential election, and the added hit to the budget that we're going to have. As we discussed the Buckeye game, Buckeye football Saturdays, and all that goes into the security of that, it reminded me of all that entails, but then all that I was thinking of a couple of weeks ago as it relates to all the added expenses that we're going to incur in 2020 due to the presidential election, because seeing President Trump at the football game a couple of weeks ago. So here we go again. What I would like to ask you about, you sent us an email. If you could briefly give us an update. You sent us an email about last night, I believe, about the building collapse in Cincinnati. Can you give us a brief update on where things are with that? Because I know that we sent folks down
Yes.
to be helpful to that. So if you could
So
briefly
one
tell us.
of the entities or collaborative groups that we support through our Homeland Security grants is the Central Iowa Strike Team, which is a collapse rescue team, urban search and rescue team that really is the product of and staffed by 11 different fire departments that will provide staffing all, from on duty, and then they will backfill. It's a special call unit, utilized very infrequently, but has been stood up since roughly 2007, trains routinely, works routinely. They are part of the statewide emergency response plan that the fire chiefs run. So whether it is ladder trucks, pumper trucks, or specialized rescue units, they're all in there, and the idea being that you could provide mutual aid or benefit to somebody who is out of their element or needs help. So with yesterday's building collapse in Cincinnati, a construction accident, they have one individual still unaccounted for, and by all accounts, I believe, is publicly being reported as a fatality or a likely fatality. Cincinnati Fire and the Cincinnati and Hamilton County Resources did what we would consider a blitz operation, in that while it was a rescue operation, they threw all of the resources, all of the staffing they could at it immediately. About last night, 7:30, 8 o'clock, they really started realizing they had really worn their staffs out, utilized all their resources, and really needed a break, but they really did not want to stop operations. So they contacted our strike team, the Central Iowa Strike Team here, and asked for their assistance. So that was unfolding roughly at 8, 9 o'clock. And because I knew Hamilton County was involved, I wanted to at least give some awareness to our county leadership, realizing that many of the municipal partners who had staff going had a chain of command that would notify the appropriate levels there. So they left about 9:30 last night, arrived in Cincinnati about midnight, went to worked throughout the night till about 6 in the morning, and then demobilized and came back home actually for shift change at the various fire departments. And I don't believe they've been requested back. I think now it's become a much more staff-managed or locally managed incident where they're just going to rotate their crews until they can do the correct recovery and stabilization within that building. I believe our crews worked effectively. I'm not aware of any injuries. In fact, had received a text message that everybody returned safely and securely to Franklin County and went back to their home jurisdictions. So, sad incident. It goes to the nature. It's really what unfolded in Cincinnati is a very, very small scale to what happened in New Orleans, but it kind of is a good reminder that as buildings are being constructed or deconstructed, they are unstable, and that these things do occur. And while they are infrequent, they are high-risk, high-intensity events. So that is an example of the system working. And that was the same process that, quite honestly, was utilized and played out in the rescue site of the tornado response to Montgomery County and Dayton back on Memorial Day. So we don't like to exercise it too much in the real world, but we do like to have it prepared and ready to go. To your point on the elections, and I don't believe I'm stealing his thunder, but it would be appropriate for me to comment that Director Leonard and I have been talking about the 2020 election and safety and security, kind of building on some of the support we've provided them as it goes to weather interruptions and power interruptions during elections leading up to this, and then what will both the primary and general election look like in 2020, and how best can we support those needs, as well as, and there's a huge element to this that's important to ensure or reassure the public on the integrity of the election and our local processes. So, in fact, we may have a meeting set up, I think, in December. We've had those conversations, and both of our agencies are looking towards 2020 and how to do that as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, staff.
All right, still ahead, that's good. You want to take a break?